Hi. It's a pleasure to be back here in Australia, and thank you so much for inviting me and for being a part of this wonderful party. That was an incredible gala last night, especially the music. I was really moved by the outward-facing sounds of that remarkable Philharmonia. Yeah. With no conductor. They could have used, no. Fine without him. Well, it's a broken world, isn't it? And our task is to find a way to heal it. Everyone that I encounter is trying to make the world a little bit better, trying to find a little peace, a little more harmony among the different parts of their lives, to create a better world for themselves and for the people that they care about. What I'm going to be speaking with you about over this next hour is an approach to leadership that is rooted in the idea that to grow as a leader, one has to have a sense of harmony or seeking a kind of peace among the different parts of one's life, work and family and community and the private self, mind, body, and spirit. And to achieve a life of significance or meaning as a leader requires affecting that kind of harmony. So I'm going to be provoking you this morning to think a little bit differently about the idea of leadership, because we need a different way to think about leadership in the world as we find it today. So when I ask you to think about what kind of leadership is needed in your world, what do you think of? What's the first thing that comes to mind? If you raise your hand, I'll just see you and you'll speak. What's the word or phrase that pops into your brain as you think about what kind of leadership is needed in the world, in my world today? Compassionate. What else? Courageous. Ethical. Thoughtful. Sorry? Self-aware. Well, enabling and authentic. Enabling of what? Of what, sorry? Team and people. Resources to get things done. Sorry? Followership. All right. Well, this is a good start. We're going to be talking about leadership here, but from the perspective of the whole person. Some of the things that we heard just now are timeless truths about leadership, but the world is different now. And it requires a different way to think about leadership. So what's different? If you can think back, as I can, over 35 years now, teaching at the Wharton School, just a couple of observations to get your brains focused on what does leadership mean to me now? How do I think about leadership? And what does it mean for me to be cultivating the next generation of leaders? And when I speak about leadership here, I'm not speaking about executive authority so much as I am about the capacity that is within all of us to imagine a better place and bring other people along with you to that place. And you can do that with no one reporting to you, and you can fail at it with a lot of people reporting to you. So it's not about executive authority that I'm speaking here. I'm speaking about the capacity to mobilize people towards goals that matter. What's different about the world today? Well, just a couple of observations to put this work into context. Think about how much society has shifted over the last few decades, or even in your lifetime. When we started the Work-Life Integration Project in 1991 at the Wharton School, which I was motivated to begin because of the arrival of my first child a few years prior to that, and how that shifted my whole mentality about what I ought to be doing with my life and career. I had been studying leadership development in the 80s and working with companies around the world on how to cultivate their leadership talent. But when my first child was born, I started to think a little bit differently about what I needed to be doing with my work. And when I held him for the first time, I thought, what am I going to do now to make the world a safe one for him to grow up in? And I couldn't get that thought out of my head. I asked everyone around me, starting with the obstetrician who brought him into the world, what do I do now? How do I make the world safe for him to grow up in? And she said, you know, you ought to have thought about that before you... It's different when you first meet someone. Well, I brought that question to my students at the Wharton School, and I asked them, what are you going to do to cultivate not just the next generation of talent in your business, but the next generation, full stop? And they were quite confused and disturbed as to why I was asking them that, and thought, well, how is that relevant for our classroom here on management of people at work, Professor? Besides, no one really cares about your family, so why are we discussing this? This is a business school, after all, 1987. But there were quite a few people in the audience in the classroom that day who were quite eager to engage in this conversation. And one of them, in response to my question, said to me, well, you're the professor, you tell us what we should do. And of course, I was just asking the question, which is, it seems, my main talent. I ask annoying questions. This is my 25-year-old daughter, my youngest, likes to think of all my questions as annoying, and that's what I'll be asking you, some annoying questions. Those questions and what that student asked me to do that day changed my career, and I started to do research on what does it take for people to integrate the different parts of their lives in a way that works for all of them. And we started to study this in companies and found real people in real organizations to explore what do they do, those that do it well. We also did some large-scale survey research, and that's what I want to tell you just a bit about here. We began to survey students at the Wharton School, and so in 1992, the entire graduating class, we asked them hundreds of questions about their lives and their careers, their hopes and aspirations, and then we asked the same set of questions 20 years later, in 2012. And compared the two generations. So this is a longitudinal study comparing two generations of people, Gen Xers and millennials. And one of the questions we asked was, do you plan to have or adopt children? And the answers, the response alternatives were yes, probably, not sure, probably not, and no. And in 1992, 79% of men and women said yes. In 2012, what do you think that number was? Well, it was 42. 42%. I thought, well, that can't be right. And I looked at the data, and sure enough, that was right. And it wasn't just students at the Wharton School, and it wasn't just in the United States. This is a trend. People are less likely to have children for all kinds of reasons that are different for men and for women. And for more, you can check out this short book which describes the results, which I called Baby Bust, because it seemed that that's what we were observing here. It turns out, however, that no one wants to buy a book called Baby Bust. Not good at marketing. So people are thinking differently about the future. If so many fewer are more engaged in their work and less involved in thinking about creating families, all kinds of cultural changes. Another aspect of having lots of years of experience behind me, I can see trends over time. Another question that I've been asking students over the years is, do you plan to work in the same company when you graduate as when you retire? And so back in the mid-'80s, what percentage of Wharton MBA students do you think said, yes, that's my plan, same company all the way? It was about 70%. And when I asked that same question recently at the opening first class on leadership at the Wharton School, looking at 70 people right in front of me, how many of you plan to work in the same company your whole career? How many hands do you think went up? There were two. There were two, and they were both heirs to major fortunes. Right. Not name Trump. Things are changing. There's the digital age, which of course has changed everything about the nature of human communication and interaction. Just going to check my messages here for a sec. Oh, shh. Oh, sorry. Wait, what? What? All right, that was obviously just a demonstration, but how did you feel when I did that just now? Sorry? Not important. But some of you are thinking, well, everyone does this all the time, right? So it's normal. That may be true. But it is still the case that you feel unimportant because my attention is elsewhere when you're expecting my attention to be here, focused on you. So when you feel that I am treating you as not important, what's the emotional reaction that you have? Sorry? Sad? Annoyed? Now we're getting there. Disappointed? Tell me how you really feel. Angry. Resentful. You're supposed to be here, not there. All right, so how we manage our perhaps most precious asset as leaders, our attention, has become an issue that, well, no one could imagine how important that was, that has become in the pre-digital age. There's income inequality, which is creating all kinds of divisions and tensions in American society and around the world. There's the threat of climate change. It's real. It's happening. And people around the world are asking us in our organizations, in our societies, what are we going to do? The world, this is the world we're operating in now. And so leadership has to be about not just work, it has to be about life. And that's what this approach, total leadership, which we created originally when I was on leave from Wharton, serving as the head of leadership development at Ford Motor. We created this program then to help our people become more conscious and active as leaders in all parts of their lives, looking into the environment to create new ideas for how to adapt rapidly to a changing world, as opposed to being inwardly focused and top-down. And that's what I'm going to share with you here, briefly, a kind of introduction, and we'll make it come alive in a way that I hope you will find relevant for you and for the people that you care about, not only in your work life, but in all the parts of your life. So, Sarah mentioned my objection to the term work-life balance, which of course is the term that everybody uses. This is the balance metaphor. You see it here. Now, what is wrong with the balance metaphor? Why is balance bullshit? They said I could say that here and without offending too many people. So I hope I didn't offend you. Yes, balance is bullshit. What's wrong with balance? I'll illustrate. In the balance model, in your head, your mindset, if things are going great at work, let's just say, you're increasing your responsibility, your impact, the value that you are creating through your work, you're getting more money, more power, more influence. This is awesome, right? This is great, right? What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture? Everything else must suffer. So that's the balance mindset, trade-off. And of course, sacrifice is necessary. I'm not here to say that you can have it all, because you can't have it all at once. No one does. But over the course of time, over the course of your lifetime, it's possible to have more of it all. If you think of yourself, and if you help other people to think of themselves as leaders in their lives, and to use leadership principles and skills to affect a kind of harmony or integration among the different parts, which is why I prefer the jazz metaphor for work and life. Work, home, community, and the private self. If you think of those four parts, those four domains, as a jazz quartet, what is a jazz quartet doing? It's making music. And the four pieces They're listening to each other and they are responding. And sometimes some of the pieces are resting. Sometimes it's just the trumpet, the horn that's playing. Other times it's just the bass and the drums. But these players are improvising around a theme, a motif, and they're trying to create a sense of beautiful sound over the course of time. I think that's a better way to think about the relationship between work and life. So what we're going to be exploring here is a model that's about improving performance in all the different parts of life as a leader in the different parts of life by creating a greater sense of harmony among them. So that's what I'm going to challenge you to be doing here, to explore what that means for you and to understand how to pursue what I call four-way wins. That is demonstrably improved performance at work, at home, in the community, and for yourself. To think of that, to put on a different set of lenses and to look for those opportunities rather than to assume trade-off is necessary all the time, because it's not. And that's what our research, that's what our data shows, and I'll share some of that with you as we progress. So we're going to begin with an assessment, one of the tools that's described in this program, which is illustrated and described in the book Total Leadership. And my hope is that you'll generate some practical ideas for creating real change in your world and how you can help other people to do the same. To create change that's sustainable because it works not just for you, not just for your business, not just for your family, not just for your community and our world, but for all the different parts. So that's what we're going to pursue now. How does that sound to you? Do you have any questions before I proceed? Shall I proceed? Well, all right then. You got a handout on the way in. It's this. I'm going to ask you to take that out, or if you can do it on your iPad or whatever, that's fine too. So here I'm inviting you, challenging you, to do one of the exercises that's at the very beginning of this process, to get you to think about, to take a picture, a snapshot of your world from the perspective of the four different domains. It's really very simple. You don't have to do it if you don't want, but you're going to get a lot more out of this next 30 or 40 minutes if you do. So please join me. Here's how you do it. Think about the four domains, whatever they mean to you. So this is subjectively defined by you. This is entirely customized to your world. One of the reasons why this model seems to fit in countries around the world, the book's in the dozens of different languages, and we deliver this content to organizations in many different settings. Because it's all about the individual trying to make sense of and affect positive change in her world. So this is about your world. Your work or career, whatever that means to you. Your home or family, whatever that means to you. And if I were to ask these 5 people to define the word family, I would probably get 5 different definitions. So whatever it is to you. Similarly, the community or society, what does that mean to you? Well, that could be your friends, your neighbors, political groups, social groups, whatever. And then there is you. Your particular qualities as a person. It could be the color of your skin, your sexual identity, your intellectual interests, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual life. Those things that are unique to you. So now, I'd like you to consider how important each of those different parts of life are to you right now. So take 100 points and allocate them according to how important each one of those domains is to you right now. So the total should be 100. If your boss is sitting next to you, the correct answer is 100, 0, 0, 0. Just kidding. If they're all equally of value to you, or you just don't want to decide, it's 25s all the way down. So this is just a snapshot, and it's just to get you thinking. All right, now, in the second column, I want you to think about where your mind is, where your attention is, that most precious asset. Where do you devote your attention? Where do you choose to move your mind? In a typical week of your life, or a typical month, on a percentage basis, How much of your attention is devoted to work, home, community, and the private self? Again, totaling 100. So there's what you value, what's important to you in column 1, and then there's where do you actually spend time thinking, worrying, acting. In the third column, I'd like you to do an estimate on a simple scale of 1, not at all satisfied, to 10, completely satisfied. How satisfied are you? Your sense of well-being, your subjective sense of well-being. How do you feel about how things are going for you at work, at home, in the community, and for yourself personally? And finally, I'd like you to think about your performance in meeting the expectations of the most important people to you in the different domains. So if you were to think about the 3 or 4 or 5 most important people at work, and if I asked them, how would they evaluate your performance in meeting their expectations on a scale, Laura, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to talk to those people in a private, confidential conversation, on a scale of 1 to 10, Laura? Kiwis always undervalue themselves? Is that what you're saying? Whatever the number is, you don't have to say it out loud. That's fine. But I do want you to write down what you think they would say to me. And similarly, you probably know that. Similarly, what would the people in your home or family life say to me if I asked them, how well are you doing in meeting their expectations, which they do, of course, have of you, just as you do of them. Similarly, the people in your community or society, how well are you doing in meeting their expectations on average? And finally, the aspirations that you have for yourself, the goals that you have for yourself, how are you doing in meeting your own expectations for your achievement, your growth? All right. I sense a certain somber attitude has overcome the crowd. People are feeling a little depressed now. Our job is to heal, to make the world better. All right, now then, now comes what I hope will be the fun part. I'm going to ask you to find someone you do not know sitting nearby and to engage in a very brief coaching exchange with that person. 3 minutes for you, 3 minutes for her. And all you have to do, of course you don't have to do this if you don't want, and it may be a little uncomfortable, but you're here to grow, to stretch a little, so try it. But don't reveal anything that you don't want to reveal, because you might have been thinking about some things just now that you don't want anyone to know. That's fine. Just talk about what you want to speak about. So if you and I were coaching partners in this exchange, and you said to me, you know, Stu, I don't want to tell you anything about what I was just thinking right now. And you seem to like to talk, so why don't you just take up the whole time and talk about yourself? That would be fine. Actually, it would be acceptable but suboptimal, so don't do that. Take your 3 minutes, and here are the questions I would like you to explore. It's pretty simple, really. What are the consequences of the choices you make about the focus of your attention on the different parts of your life? Consequences of the choices you make. And what is the greatest challenge you personally face in creating a greater sense of harmony, as you would define it, among the different parts of your life? Not time. The first thing that you'll think of is, well, if I had more time, then you don't. We don't. So what's holding back any opportunity for change? Is it something in the world around you? Is it people telling you, you can't do that? You're not allowed? We don't have the resources, the materials, the money? Or, more likely, is it something inside of you? Is it your fear, your anxiety about trying something new that might fail, that other people would think is silly or stupid and might make fun of you? You might feel ashamed. Perhaps you feel selfish, guilty for trying something that you think would benefit you and not others. Maybe you're just ignorant, can't think of anything. What's holding you back? So from this analysis, I hope and expect you might start to think about ideas for generating change that might help you to improve your satisfaction and performance all the way around, all the different parts. So I'm going to ask you to coach each other. Many of you are excellent coaches, I know. And I have done a lot of study in the field of coaching. I've done a lot of coaching myself, and there's one thing that I know from the research and my own practice is that you are much more effective as a coach for someone if they believe that you care about them as a human being. Not because someone told you to be in this role or because it makes you feel better listening to someone else's problems or they're paying you. So, how do you demonstrate that you care about another person? How do you do that? Put the phone away. Definitely. But you've already done that. How do you do it? Just ask a genuine question that expresses your real curiosity. Look at them and follow up. So that's it. All you have to do now, 3 minutes for you, 3 minutes for her. All you have to do now is act like you care about someone else for 3 minutes. Do you think you can do that? I certainly hope so. So this is a one-on-one conversation. This is not a trio or a quartet. This is not like all four of you sitting around together talking. It's two people talking to each other, listening to each other. Do you have any questions about what I'm now asking you to do? 3 minutes for you, 3 minutes for him. Find a person, preferably someone you do not know, sitting nearby. Any questions? Please begin. 23. All right. All right, let me ask you to bring this to a close here. Okay. Thank you for doing that. So what did you take away from this exchange? What did you discover? Sarah? That Laura is what? A really cool person. Well, we knew that. You liked her jazz singing? Oh, we're going to hear some of that later, Laura? No? You discovered something about her jazz singing. What else did you discover? Yes? That's for sure. Yes, these numbers change a lot over time. It's a dynamic picture. We just took a snapshot here. It's not the whole movie. And it's useful, many people find it useful to go back to this simple tool to check in on the alignment of their actions and values because things do change. People are born, people die, new opportunities arise in your life where you make different choices. So yes, of course, things change. Yes. What else did you discover? We all struggle with it. Yes. Who said that? And why is that important? We're all in it together. Well, kind of. Well, this is a really important idea that she just mentioned. When you have a conversation with someone else about these questions, what you learn is that you're not the only one because virtually everyone is struggling with this set of questions about how to affect a greater sense of harmony among the different parts of life, that you are not alone in this. And that might seem like a very soft and squishy kind of idea, but it's actually a very important and powerful one because it helps you to realize that this is a universal aspect of human life, and if our future is to be more human, which is our theme here in this conference, we have to acknowledge that this is a universal struggle. Everyone's story is different, and it plays out differently in different places and different cultures, but virtually everyone is wrestling with this. We are all, in some ways, broken, needing healing, a greater sense of coherence or harmony. And that helps you to realize that it's not just you, and that you're not a failure in life because things are difficult, or that you are wrestling with these questions. So it's helpful to talk with other people about the questions that we are raising here in just this very brief conversation. So peer-to-peer exchange is an essential part of this model of total leadership, which I would now like to take you through very briefly, just a very quick overview of what's in the rest of the story here. And then I'll take some questions from you. But first, just a quick overview of what this program looks like, which typically takes about a few months, but can be done in a much shorter period. And it's based on the research that we did in the 90s after we formed the Work-Life Integration Project, not the Work-Life Balance Project, the Work-Life Integration Project, back in the early 90s, and found out, well, what is it that people do? They do three things. They follow these three principles of being real, acting with authenticity by clarifying what's most important to them, their values and their vision. Being whole, acting with integrity, trying to see the whole as one, integrity, the root of that term is one, a sense of coherence, respecting all the different parts of life. And to be innovative, to be continually experimenting with new ways of getting things done, acting with creativity. So this program, which we've now done with tens of thousands of people, brings to life these principles in ways that make them real in the specific customized settings that individuals find themselves. It begins, of course, like any important learning journey that is mindful and intentional, with the question of why you're here. So that's the first question I would ask you. Why are you here? What's your purpose in learning, in trying to change? And then we get into a simple set of exercises that helps people to become more conscious of their values and their vision. So you just did one of them, the four-way view. Another way to look at the four domains is to think about not just where your attention is, but where are your values? How are they being expressed in the different parts of your life? So the values that you pursue at work, are those consistent with, are they compatible with the values that you pursue in your family life? Do people see you in the same way in terms of what you stand for, what you represent, the values that are of importance to you? What about in the community? And how about for yourself personally, in your own life, your spiritual life? Do those line up, or are they antagonistic? The four domains. So an aspiration to consider another way to provoke your thinking about changes that you might make is to imagine them as perfectly aligned. Imagine that. Imagine if all the different domains of your life, you were pursuing values and goals that were compatible with each other as opposed to antagonistic. Now, I've never met anyone who has a picture that looks like that. It's an aspiration. And there's a free site where you can do that exercise that I just showed you and share it with people and get reactions to ideas that are generated by looking at the different ways in which your values are expressed in the different parts of your life. We also ask people to articulate a leadership vision, which, of course, is the sine qua non. It's essential for us as leaders. It inspires, it provides direction, it guides our action, and helps us to remain stable by focusing attention on the things that matter out there, giving our lives, our work, a sense of meaning and purpose, and generating enthusiasm, especially for ourselves. So I define a leadership vision, very simply, a compelling, pulls your heart, image, it's a picture, of an achievable, realistic future out there. And if you don't have one of the things that we'll be doing in the workshop tomorrow is digging in to leadership visions and how to articulate them and actually practice doing that. It's best, of course, if it's rooted in your past. So another thing that we ask people to do is to tell the story of the critical episodes in your life history that has shaped your values. What's happened to you in your life that you're willing to tell other people that has turned you into the person that you are, what you stand for, what you value? What are those episodes? And how does that lead you to the future you want to go to? That is filled, because it's important to you, with a sense of passion and hope. And that includes people around you. So therefore it becomes personally meaningful to you. And the way that comes to life in these exercises is simply describe a day in your life 15 years from now. So September 18, 2034, what happens on that day? In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and why are you doing what you're doing? That's a very effective way of articulating your leadership vision. All of those exercises are, again, intended to help you to articulate for yourself what you care most about, which is the hardest part of leadership, some would say, and the hardest part of affecting integration among the different parts of life. It's really the same puzzle. It starts with what you care about, and often requires a great deal of courage to admit to that, to see it, and to say it. The second piece of the puzzle is to be whole. And here, this comes to life by simply identifying, as you started to do just now, who are the most important people to you, and why are they important? You'd be surprised how interesting that question becomes when you start to write about who they are, why they matter, and how they fit with your values and vision. And then write about what they expect of you and what you expect of them, which you just started to talk a little bit about. Where is there conflict among those expectations? Where is there compatibility? How is what your parents expect of you and your children consistent with what your colleagues and clients and friends expect of you and what you expect of yourself? And where is there conflict? How well are you doing? And then finding out realistically what they actually think by engaging in dialogue with those important people. And so you prepare for and undertake dialogues with the most important people in your life over the course of a few weeks, and discover that what they expect of you is actually a little bit less and a little bit different than what you think they expect. I'm going to say that again because I know many of you are skeptical and thinking, well, no, Stu, you don't know my husband, you don't know my boss, you don't know my children. They expect a lot more of me than I think. Not true in most cases. And I'm willing to bet money on that because I've seen it so many times. In a typical stakeholder dialogue, what happens is you would go in and say, I want to talk with you about our relationship and how to make it stronger. Would you be willing to do that? Because you're someone who's really important to me. Just saying that creates all kinds of value. Most people will be flattered, they'll feel good, they'll thank you for it. And then you begin by saying, here's what I think is most important to you. And of course, I've written about this, I've checked in with my coach. All of this happens in the context of peer-to-peer coaching. Here are the 4 things I think are most important to you. Do I have it right? So I'm willing to be wrong and corrected and humbled. Well, what I'm likely to hear in response is, the first 2 things that you mentioned, Stu, those are quite accurate. The third and fourth, I don't really care so much about. Wow, that's interesting. Tell me more. You're here to learn. You're open, vulnerable, humble, eager to see the world as other people see it. That's what we need of ourselves as leaders and of others. And what you discover when you see that I'm being open, interested, non-defensive, is that people are willing to tell you things that you hadn't thought about before. There is this other thing that you didn't mention, Stu, that I'd like to tell you about. Tell me, what is it? And so I hear this other thing. So I go into the conversation with these 4 things I'm worried about with just this one stakeholder, and I come out with these 3 from that conversation. I've learned, I've changed. What does that mean for me, for my psychology, for my action? What does it mean? What's the implication? I do have a different perspective. And how is it different? There's better trust because she now understands that I get what she cares about. I also have less stress and less pressure, and I'm smarter about what I should be doing with my time and attention because I know better what doesn't matter and what really does. And I've discovered something new that I didn't know before. That's what typically happens. All of this is diagnostic and generates ideas for innovation. Change, which is what leadership is all about. So the people who are really good at this, the people we studied in the initial research, they're constantly innovating in ways that are seeking change that's good for them and the world around them. So I want you to think about yourselves like her. She's a scientist. But here the laboratory is your life. And you're experimenting, continually experimenting, and sharing your ideas about experiments so that other people see you as someone who's innovating and experimenting too. But the purpose of the experiments in this approach to leadership is to produce four-way wins, to improve results and satisfaction in all the different parts. Satisfaction of the expectations of others and of yourself, to mobilize people to move to a better place and to find new ways of creating value, not just for you, but for the people around you. And it's based on the theory of small wins, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's baby steps. That's how change happens. So there's a huge literature in the field of organization studies on change, and small wins is one of those leading theories. So here's a one slide, 30-second summary of that research. What's a small win? Well, it's moving down a path that I have chosen, breaking it down into small, concrete, measurable chunks, acting what you can control, acting on that which is available to you to change. And when you do that, you start to feel a little more confident, and momentum starts to build, and other people see that you're not destroying their world, but because you're doing it for them and adjusting, that their resistance is lowered and they want to support you because you're doing it for them, not just for you. And you discover that you've got more freedom to make change happen than you think because you are leading. You're bringing them along with you. Now, I don't have time to get into all the details of the different kinds of experiments that people do, but there are these 9 different kinds of experiments. I'll just put them up here for just to illustrate briefly. The first 1,000 or so people that went through this program about 16, 17 years ago, we asked a research team over the summer, we just looked at these 1,000 cases. What do people do when you ask them to create change that's good for all the different parts of their lives? And we came up with these 9 different types. I'll just give you a couple of illustrations. They're really simple. To track and reflect, just to do a log or a diary of what happens to you in your life. Raises your awareness. You become more mindful and intentional about the choices you're making. To plan and organize your time in new ways. One person, for example, for his experiment, he met with his family over the course of a weekend for 20 minutes to talk about, well, what are you working on this week that you need help with that we can help you with? And went around the circle to do that. And that had a profound impact on the different parts of his life. Some people just share their calendars with others and plan more openly as to what they're doing in the different parts of their lives. To restore and rejuvenate, the most common kind of experiment, taking care of yourself so that you can be of greater value to other people. That's the most popular. And probably some of you are thinking, I need to take care of myself better so I can be better at work, less of a jerk, more available to my family, and available to my friends and to my business. Especially because many people rate themselves as having the least satisfaction. Appreciating and caring, bringing people together to do fun things, perhaps with people at work, and just appreciating basic human connections. Focusing and concentrating, bounding time and attention for one person or project at a time, and just trying to do that. One person who worked at an investment bank, her experiment was to not take her smartphone in the shower. That was the challenge that she was able to meet. Revealing more of yourself, taking that leadership vision and sharing it with others, shifting where and when you get things done, delegating so that other people do things that free you up and helps them to grow, or just trying something new. a new part of your job, a new relationship, a new musical instrument, anything. Could be anything, but it has to serve other people's interests as well. And then you reflect on what you discover. Whether this experiment works or doesn't, what you find is that you shift your thinking. You see yourself as a leader in a different way. You start to see a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of connection and support from other people, and a greater curiosity and optimism about the future. That's what we observe. We also have studied the impact in a number of different ways, including looking at the results before and after of the four-way view that you just did before. So let me share those with you, and then I'll wrap up. The importance ratings. They look like this for the people that the hundreds of people who were in this particular study. Just what you did right here. Your numbers would probably look something like that on average. And then 4 months later, after doing the dialogues and the experiments, the assessment of importance looked like this. So what do you see there? Not much change. And that's because your values don't shift over the course of a few months very much, on average, certainly for a large group. This is not a cult. There's no surgery here. There's no drugs. So you are who you are pretty much over the course of a few months. But let's look at how the attention shifts. This is what it looked like before they began this process of growth as leaders, seeking harmony among the different parts of life, and what the attention scores looked like 3 or 4 months later. What do you see here? What do you see? More aligned, and how? Less attention to work, more attention to the other parts of life. This is when some of you are thinking, why did we bring him here to speak to us about, is this what they're teaching at the Wharton School now? Yes, it is. And mine is one of the most popular courses in the school. Why is that? It's not just because people need to work less, it's because when they do so consciously, mindfully, deliberately, they are performing better, they feel better. These are the delta scores on that rating scale that you just saw, that you just did. Satisfaction goes up, particularly in the self-domain, where the rating at the start is lowest, and performance goes up in meeting the expectations of key people in the different parts of life, including at work. Less attention to work, better performance in meeting the expectations of key people at work. That's a paradox that my economist friends wonder about. Assuming these data are valid, and I'll be happy to share and talk with you about our methods if you like afterwards, but for now, assume they are valid, how would you explain this result? Less attention to work, better performance at work. How can that be? Say it again. Productivity improves. Why should it improve? Some clarity. For many people, that means separation or boundedness. For some people, it means bringing the different parts of life together. Your mental health is better. Indeed, we've seen the data on this, that well-being, emotional, mental health, physical health improves. You're more focused, less distracted, and clearer about what really matters, and wasting less effort. Those are the main observations that we find. So, let me conclude. This is about creating change that's sustainable, but not just at work. Sustainable because it works for all the different parts. And it's a different mindset that can be practiced, can be learned, like leadership must be. You know, I'm often asked, are you born or made as a leader? And of course the answer is yes. You're born and you're made by what you want to become. These are the principles for action, and as you practice it, you get better at it. Like with any skill. The world is indeed broken. I hope that these ideas are valuable to you as you think about what you can do to help to heal it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. All right.
We get to ask you a couple of questions for that presentation. Wonderful. Lots to think about. And it's interesting. I think part of it from our session was giving yourself permission to do the things that you want to do, because they're going to help you be better at the things that you are doing. So a couple of questions that have come in from others here. One that I find really interesting, how do you set and maintain your own priorities when life and unexpected events have a way of taking over?
It's hard. It's hard. And what I've discovered personally, because every one of us suffers from disappointment and frustration and indeed tragedy, all of us. As I was telling Sarah before we began, one of my children, I have 3 kids, I told you about one of them. First one, I told you a little bit about my daughter, my youngest, my middle son, who is just a beautiful child. He's now 29, but he was struck with schizophrenia when he was 13. That's 16 years ago. And that was, as you can imagine, a highly disruptive, really explosive aspect of our family history. And the way our family was able to stay focused on what it is that we needed to do in the world for each other, as well as for the people that we serve through our work, both my wife and I, was to get help, to ask for help. This came up in our brief conversation about the coaching exchange earlier. We ask for help, and we have it from the people surrounding us. And most people discover when they ask for help that they have a lot more love and support surrounding them than they think. So I think the short answer to that is to get help and to ask for it, difficult as that might be to do. For many of us, we're ashamed to ask for help. But what I have found is that when you're asking for support from other people to enable you to make things better for other people, I need your help so that I can take care of these people or this person, that people are a lot more likely to want to help you, and you feel less guilty asking for that help.
Those are great answers. This is an interesting question. One of our delegates says, I've heard of research that suggests those entering the workforce are more likely to perceive themselves as a unique talent, certain to be CEO. Have you heard of this research, and what do you make of it?
I don't know that, so I can't really comment. I think that young people, though, and as most people in the audience here know this, are entering the workforce thinking, I've got to do something that matters, that's going to enable me to make a difference. They're so much more aware than I was as a 20-year-old many moons ago, and that you were too, probably, of all the things that need to be worked on. And so finding an opportunity to make a positive impact on the world, that's what people want to do now more than ever. And I applaud that and encourage it. It's hard to temper their ardor for getting to the top immediately to be able to make those changes happen. But I think it's something that we should be encouraging.
One last question for you. Who was the more effective leader, President Clinton or President Obama? This is one of your questions, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, wow.
And why? I saved the best for last there.
Sorry?
I saved the toughest for last.
Yeah,
we'll put you on the spot.
Well, I think Obama had the more difficult challenge for all kinds of reasons, including his skin color, and also the state of the world that he inherited was just in deeper disarray, and all kinds of explosive issues happening all around him, and what he was able to do to make positive change happen, given the many constraints that he was facing, I think makes him the better leader.
There you go. You have an answer to that question. And if you are finding that these insights are making you think, I want to take Stu's leadership session, guess what? You still can. All you need to do is go to outside the exhibition center and you can register. There are going to be people who help you with that.
I'll tell you what we're going to do in that.
Yeah, go for it.
In 15 seconds, we're going to focus on leadership vision. So we'll have a brief workshop on that. And then we're going to get into those stakeholder expectations in a little bit more detail than I was able to get into here. So we're going to explore who those key people are and look at their mutual expectations. And then we'll leave, each one of you will leave with an idea for a specific experiment, a game plan and a scorecard for an experiment that you are super excited about because you can see how it's going to create value for you and the people around you. And all this will happen in the context of the peer-to-peer coaching. So that's what tomorrow's workshop's about.
All right, that gives you a much better idea of what's happening tomorrow. In the meantime, let's give a big round of applause. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Stu.